Okay, good morning. Thank you very much for joining us this morning. My name is Carlin Laraway. I am the Director of Assessment and Accountability for the State Department of Education. I'm joined here with me by the assessment team this morning, and we hope that our update is helpful. Just a couple of reminders, like always, submit your questions to the questions box, and we'll answer those as we go. Our PowerPoint presentation is available as a handout. It's been posted today as of about 15 minutes ago. And of course, our presentation is being recorded and will be posted. Our turnaround time for that is typically a week to 10 days. We'll try to get that posted before the Christmas break. Just a brief update on our typical Spring Roadshow. Normally, we would be preparing for our travel to the 3 regions for the annual update. But we have heard from many of you that the information that we provide is helpful, but you'd like to see us in the fall and have more questions and have smaller group settings. So we are taking a new approach. No Spring Roadshow this year. Instead, all of the pre-test, during test, and post-test activities that we have typically covered in our Spring Roadshow will be posted as modules on our website and available to you as early as February 1st. We'll start rolling those out. That allows you to access those and information in real time as relevant to your job. We will cover ISAT topics, test information, of course, test delivery system, online reporting system for our ISAT. We'll also have IRI test administration manual and additional guidance. We'll talk about SAT school day. We'll cover science administration and general topics and responsibilities of test coordinators and test security in those modules. So we hope this will be of meaningful help to all of you. And then in the fall, we plan to hit all 6 regions of the state for regional assessment and accountability sessions. We'll get to know all of you in the field and then have you get a chance to get to know the assessment and accountability team. This regional work will be targeted to assessment coordinators. Relevant information for all of the assessment system across the entire school year. We'll also have an opportunity to review the accountability data. And as we're out visiting with you in the fall, capture other relevant training topics and professional development needs you have identified that our team can provide throughout the year. So we hope this transition to the beginning of the year sets everyone up for success throughout the rest of the school year, and that we can continue to meet your needs in the ways that you need us to. With that, I'm going to turn things over to Kevin Whitman for an update on our student, parent, and staff engagement surveys.
Good morning, everyone. As you may recall, our accountability system does have those engagement surveys that we administer to students in grades 3 through 12, parents and staff. And we wanted to share a little bit of information about how those surveys would look this year. So the first big change that we're going to have is that we're administering the surveys all over the same window this year. So thank you to everyone who responded to our poll that we put out last year about the best timing for those surveys. So all 3 surveys are going to be open from February 18th through March 31st, 2020. The other big change that we have is related specifically to the student survey this year. We're going to have pre-built rosters instead of having the student just enter his or her state student ID in a text field. So we're basing those initial rosters that you're going to see on the December IC uploads that districts are submitting. And there is going to be a process for adding or removing students. One big benefit of this change is that it's going to allow districts and schools to see which students have or have not participated, although we're still going to have individual student responses remain anonymous. And this should help you as you track participation and try to meet our goal of 95%. The parent and staff surveys will remain the same as last year. We're going to email out custom survey links to superintendents and charter administrators. So we'll have a few emails that'll be coming out soon to confirm contact information and share a little bit of info on those as well. And we'll also have a recorded webinar that goes through the roster management and administration process I mentioned for the student survey. So please stay tuned to our newsletter and the survey page that we have at the URL here. We've already added a few new FAQs, and we're going to add a lot more information there in the future. And one thing I wanted to make folks aware of as you receive the information this year, you may see a new name, Cognia, on a lot of the material. That is the former Advanced Ed. So from a usability standpoint, really the only thing that'll change from your side in interacting with them is just which kind of email address it's going to sometimes and the name you'll see on documents. So all the same great folks that we worked with last year are still there. So just be aware that Advanced Ed is now Cognia. And one other quick note I wanted to add on an accountability item is that the graduation rate appeals follow-up window is now open. So that opened on December 9th, and we're going to keep that open for a week. This is your opportunity to add additional documents or justifications for appeals that you might have originally submitted, but we returned. Thank you.
Kevin, we have a question from Kelly Glenn. For the staff surveys, who does the State Department of Education define as staff?
So we allow districts to send it out to any staff members of interest. So on your side, that's really so that you can make the best use of the survey. So if you want to send it out to just instructional staff, if you want to include support staff, you can do that as well. We encourage you to be broad-based about that, get as much information as you can, but it is a district decision. On the survey, the staff member will indicate what type of position they're in, so you can just aggregate the results on your side to see that information as well.
Thank you. That's all the questions so far. And now we'll turn things over to Paul Kleinert with the NAEP update.
Hey everybody, this is Paul Kleinert with the 2019 NAEP Results. The National Assessment of Educational Progress releases a ton of data with every release, and I'm going to fly through some major highlights from this year's administration. NAEP is the only assessment that measures what U.S. students know and can do in various subjects across the nation and states. The 2019 results include mathematics and reading for 4th and 8th grade students. Overall, 4th grade math scores went up since 2015, and student scoring at the NAEP Advanced benchmark increased since 2009 from 5% to 8%. Idaho scores remain similar to previous years. Those scores at Advanced went from 8% in 2009 to 11% in 2019. The percentage of students scoring below NAEP Basic rose from 22% to 26% in the last 10 years. Economically disadvantaged student scores went down since 2009. 4th grade reading scores went up since 2013. The percentage scoring at Advanced increased in the last 10 years from 6% to 9%. English language students' scores rose significantly. The score gap between those on an IEP and those not on an IEP grew significantly. The national public school average decreased along with Idaho and 30 other states. Those scoring at Advanced grew from 2% to 4% since 2009. For further results and the presentation that I proudly created, go to the national and international page on the SDE assessment website. The URL is listed here. Click on NAEP 2019 in Idaho, click NAEP 2019 Idaho results, and also see the other relevant results snapshots. Please let me know at any time if you have questions. Happy holidays, and may the NAEP be with you.
Thank you for that update. I'm going to pause for just a minute. We have a quick question, a follow-up to the staff survey from Kelly Glenn. Kelly's asking about the requirement to have 90% staff participation. How do we get the denominator accurate? Kevin, we don't have a specific target for participation by staff.
Yeah, we have a kind of a general goal there, but we don't do anything with a calculation on that. That's more of a general goal to encourage broad participation, but we don't have a denominator we pool and then adjust anything the way that you might do for ISAT, ELA, or math participation.
Okay, thank you. And then Kathy Loris has asked if secondary students will be rostered by teachers, or if they're a general roster, they're on a trimester schedule. So if we use the December IC upload to roster by teacher, their rosters would only be accurate for about 2 weeks.
Yeah, it won't be set by teacher. It'll be listed based on the district and school. And then at that point, up to the local district and school personnel to kind of distribute the information out to the appropriate teachers for administering the survey, where the student would have a login ID. So it won't be tied to a particular teacher at that point in time.
Okay, I think that is all of the questions right now. So we'll move ahead and get an update from Andrew on our English language proficiency assessment.
All right, good morning. Andrew Bennett here to give you some updates and reminders about the upcoming access test. In late spring of 2020, the WIDA English Language Development Standards 2020 edition is scheduled for release. Although the 5 original standard statements have not changed, the tools to interpret and use the standards for the instructional purposes are getting a makeover. To gain feedback on how well the new resources combine language use within specific content areas, it is encouraged that all stakeholders, including language specialists, content area classroom teachers, and administrators participate in an initial review of the draft resources and complete a survey. Providing your valuable input will refine how these resources can be improved to meet the specific needs of Idaho ELs and EL stakeholders. Okay, over 20,000 identified ELs in Idaho were uploaded to the Data Recognition Corporation on November 21st, 2019. Woohoo! Districts will be able to begin to manage the various test sessions within WIDA AMS on December 31st. So mark your calendars. Any newly identified EL student in Idaho will need to be added manually to the WIDA AMS system after the test sessions are available. Accommodations that were not previously input through the ELMS Access Setup Enhancement will need to be added into WIDA AMS prior to administering the access test. It is highly recommended to inventory test materials once they arrive on January 14th, 2020, to identify any additional materials that may need to be ordered by the district through WIDA AMS. As a reminder, during the test window, all current English learners with an L status of L1, LE, or EW must take all 4 sections of the test: reading, writing, listening, and speaking. The primary test administration window will start on January 27th and end on February 28th, 2020. So mark your calendars. For districts who need to administer a makeup session, March 2nd through March 6th will be reserved as the makeup window. All materials need to be sent back to DRC no later than Friday, March 13th, 2020. Districts have the option of sending test materials back to DRC before this date once all testing is complete. As always, it is highly recommended to review the Test Administrator Manual and District School Test Coordinator Manual prior to testing to review best practices around pre, during, and post-access test administration processes and activities. These manuals, along with other videos, tutorials, and resources, can be found within the WIDA Secure portal. So please take a look at that. Okay, in preparation for the 2020 Access Administration, districts and schools should consider the following when planning for a successful test administration. First, districts and schools should consistently check ELMS to verify all ELs are accounted for and have been placed into a test session within the WIDA AMS portal. 2, district test coordinators need to confirm that all staff administering or handling test materials have been certified to administer the WIDA access test. And district test coordinators can check if test administrators have completed the training within the WIDA Secure portal under the account management and training status icon. 3, IEP and school teams should finish the discussion of what administrative considerations and or accommodations should be assigned to individual students based on current instructional supports being used that will allow students equitable access to the language proficiency assessment. And last, students should be aware of the dates and times they will be testing. It is always advisable to familiarize students with the structure of the test and give them multiple opportunities to interface with the practice items. Students can access practice questions through the Insight browser or by going to WIDA AMS's main page and scrolling to the bottom. And like always, test administrators, school test coordinators, technology coordinators, and district test coordinators are encouraged to participate in the webinars supported by WIDA and the ELPA team. The next webinar is scheduled for today at 12 o'clock, and we'll provide information on managing test sessions online. So that will be very valuable going forward. Looking forward to January. And a complete list of scheduled webinars along with links to join them can be found on the English Language Proficiency Assessment website under the Training tab. So we hope to see you there. I am open for any questions that anyone may have.
Don't see any questions at this time, but of course, if you have any questions related to the WIDA Access Assessment or questions specifically for Andrew, please type them in the questions box. In the meantime, I'm going to fill in for Karen Striegel, who is at a Medicaid meeting this morning, and I'll give you an update on our alternate assessment. Idaho Science Portfolio Tutorial Series is located on the Idaho Training Clearinghouse, and the tutorial series has 5 installments. The overview, all of the content that is assessed in the alternate assessment science portfolio, the administration of the science portfolio, example artifacts, and portfolio requirements for final submission. This is the last year for using the IPASS system for the alternate assessment in science. That was opened in November 8th. So you could add students and teachers and assign students to teachers. That information is covered in that overview document. Finally, alternate assessment practice tests for English language arts and math are available on the ISAT portal. This is thanks to South Carolina, who has a very similar alternate assessment, and the practice tests are dedicated to them. Thank you for letting us borrow them. We appreciate it. Go to the landing page, click on the card, and there is a quick guide link in the document that we've attached. So if you have any questions, please reach out to Karen. And we'll take a look, and I don't see any questions. So now we will turn things over to Kevin Chandler, who's joining us today for a science update.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us. Just a couple of updates and reminders for ISAT Science. So for spring 2020, we do have the grade level set for our ISAT Science test. At elementary, they'll be administered at grade 5. At middle school, it will be administered at grade 8. And then at high school, it would be administered at grade 11. Apropos of that, FDE is seeking a temporary accountability waiver for some of the provisions in ESSA. So what this waiver is going to allow us to do is administer this new science assessment in lieu of the old one. And it's also going to exempt FDE from the reporting for this new science assessment results from spring 2020. So a couple of benefits that we see for this, of course, is going to reduce the testing time for students and educators because we don't have to, administer the old assessment and also the new assessment as well. It's also going to allow some of the schools to implement some of their new curriculum that are going to align with the new state standards. And it's also going to remove that pressure from also preparing the students for the legacy assessment as well. So we do have a public comment period open for this particular waiver. That particular waiver public comment period is going to be open until December 15th, midnight on that particular date. So please submit your comment using the form that's going to be linked in the presentation today. All right, so moving on, I do want to touch on a couple of the other resources that are currently available for the science test. We do have a science sample test. We have one for elementary, middle, and high school. The good thing about this one is that guest users can log in under a guest session, and you can take this as many times as you like. So students, educators, parents even can log in to this new science sample test, take it, and they can actually see which scoring assertions they got right as they work their way through it. This is going to be available on the ISAT portal. We have a practice test, a new science practice test coming soon. We're going to have 8 questions, each of the grade bands, elementary, middle, and high. Practice setting up test session and have your students practice taking that particular new assessment. That also is going to be available through the ISAT portal. And of course, we are preparing some scoring materials for that as well, and those are going to be posted on the ISAT portal as well. And then also, I want to remind everybody, we do also have some science interims as well. We have 14 elementary, 19 middle school, and 20 high school interim tests that are available. You can administer those to the Test Administration app or AVA as well, and we are preparing score materials for those, and we're going to be publishing those hopefully by the end of this week. A couple of reminders, of course, on the testing window for the spring 2020 assessment. It's going to be a field test, and of course, no scores are going to be reported for state districts and teachers, of course, pending that waiver approval. And then lastly, a couple of other resources I do want to point out. The Introduction to Spring 2020 ISAT Science Test. Got a lot of questions and answers that I've gotten from the field, so I published that on the ISAT portal. We do have blueprints for the interims and the summative assessments published, and then also some test time estimates as well. How long it would take an elementary, middle, or high school student to take a standalone or cluster. And then I'm also working on a new resource, modeling the new Idaho State Science Standards. So how do those 2 and 3 dimensions fit together? So I'm going to be publishing that resource very soon.
Kevin, you have a couple of questions. First one from Mike Nelson. First, he extends his appreciation for a nice webinar this morning. Thank you, Mike. We appreciate you joining us. Kevin, the question for you is, do you have a date when the scoring guide for the assessment viewing application will be available for the science assessment?
So for the interims, again, we are aiming for the end of the week for having those scoring materials published.
And a follow-up question to that from Kelly is, where will those scoring guides for the ISAT interim assessments live?
So because report for student performance can be seen in the Airways reporting system, where we're going to be publishing those is where we publish the interim scoring guides for the ELA and math interim scoring guides. So if you log into Tide, and up in the upper right-hand corner, there's a link called General Resources. If you mouse over that, you'll see the drop-down say interim scoring materials or something like that. We'll be publishing those science interim scoring materials with those ELA and math scoring materials there.
And a quick follow-up question from Sheree Hamilton. And this one I'll take. This is related to the waiver request and specifically about schools not receiving science scores for the year if that waiver is approved. Sheree, that is correct. That idea behind the waiver request is that the science content standards were only adopted and implemented for the last little over 18 months, although many school districts had moved in that direction ahead of that timeline. So it would be very premature to use students taking that test for the first time this year to set baseline scores using student performance this year. So the idea behind that waiver is, again, to buy a little time for the transition into the new standards for both teachers and for students, and also not have to take the legacy test, the old ISAT test, the multiple choice test, so students aren't burdened with taking two specifically. So that is the purpose of that. So you're correct. Students would not receive scores. Schools would also not receive scores. The department would get some information about student performance and data around those science items that helps us to inform the quality of the assessment as we continue that development. And Kevin has lots of opportunities for educators in the field to participate in that review. So if anyone on this call is interested, reach out to Kevin. His information will be available on the next slide. One more question came in from Janet Avery, and she is following up, and I think this one goes back to you, Kevin Whitman, about the survey rostering. She saw that it comes from the December IC upload, but she wanted to clarify what happens for students who enroll after that time. Can you readdress that?
Yes, so there is a form that you'll be able to use that allows you to make changes to the roster. So you can add students, remove students as you need, and you would get new token login IDs for those students that you could use. And so the webinar that we have coming up will go into some more detail, but basically you'll use the online portal that's there to draw down a change form that you can submit. So it should be pretty straightforward, but we'll have some kind of step-by-step directions for you in the near future.
All right. I think that's all the questions so far. You are very welcome, Janet. We're happy to help. All right. We're going to turn things over again to Kevin Chandler with an ISAT update.
Excellent. All right. So I'm back. So just a couple of updates and reminders for the ISAT system. Interim assessments. That window is currently open. So if you haven't already logged in, go ahead and take time to take a look at some of the interim assessments we have available for ELA and math. That is available through the ISAT portal. The results for the interim assessment. So if you administer an interim assessment through the TA app or the test administration app, the results of those interim assessments are going to be published on Airways reporting. Access to previous year's interim and summative results also are still going to be available through online reporting or ORS. Dovetailing off of that, just want to point out, of course, that we do have access to Smart Balance Digital Library. A lot of great resources available to teachers for the Connections playlist and for each of the focused interim assessment blocks. Again, there are over 150 Connections playlists, and they're going to be sorted by instructional resources across grades and content areas. Of course, those are also going to be available through the ISAT portal. And how can resources be contributed to that? Well, Idaho educators can contribute resources to the digital library. So if you would like the opportunity to become part of our state network of educators, Smarter Balance is having 2 workshops during the summer of 2020. If you would like to sign up for one of those and become eligible maybe of joining the SNE, please do that via the form that's linked here in the presentation. And then also want to point out, of course, the ISAT summative assessment window, grades 3 through 8 through 10, 9, 11, of course, are optional. That is, of course, is going to be available through the ISAT portal. And then in preparation for that, of course, we have some student file layouts that are going to be available through TIDE. Our new TAM is going to be available February 1. And just a couple of important reminders here, of course. Participation rate is calculated by students enrolled on or before the first Friday in May. So that's going to be May 1, 2020. Of course, proficiency rates are calculated from students enrolled in the first 56 calendar days of your school year.
All right. We have a couple of ISAT questions before we move on to our IRI updates. So I will start with Kelly Glenn has asked about students completing ISAT interims. Are responses based on end of year expected responses? So Kelly, I'm assuming your question is, are we using the same type of scoring expectations and are students seeing the same type of items in the interim assessments? And the simple answer is yes. Most definitely, students taking the ISAT interim assessment are most likely seeing items that have previously been administered on a summative test and have been released. So the scoring and the responses are based on what we would expect to see at the end of the year, and that allows the flexibility of administering the interim assessments to demonstrate mastery as you move through content throughout the school year. I don't know if the team has anything they'd add to that. Anita has asked, will we be able to see this year's results next school year on the block assessments now that they are only stored in airways? And again, simple answer is yes. In fact, Anita, all interim assessment scoring is being migrated to airways, including previous year's history, is my understanding, over the summer this year. So going forward, online reporting system will be phased out and all reporting will be in airways beginning next year. And that will include all historical information as well. So more to come on that. That's a 2021 release, but yes, in answer to your question, schools will be able to see next year the block assessments administered this year in airways. And now I'm going to hand over the controls to Elena for an update on the Idaho Reading Indicator.
Hi everyone, several things to share this month regarding IRI. First, I've had some questions about where to locate fall IRI data, so just some clarity there. IRI scores, as you know, are reported at state, district, school level. They're then aggregated by grade level, subgroup, and other demographic information that we find in your IC report. Fall 2019 data, you're going to find that on the Assessment and Accountability webpage that I've linked here. Please note that IRI data is not populated into the report card until the spring of each school year. So please use the link above or visit the Assessment and Accountability page to access your fall IRI data. Also, some things to know and important points to remember when you're looking at the posted IRI results. State results have applied business rules that are outlined in the 2019 Accountability and Reporting Rules document. As a result of this, your district and school-facing data in iStation may differ from state-reported data. If you are interested, you can request a secure file transfer of unredacted district or school accountability data from ISDE through Otis, and we've linked that here for you. Some new rostering requirements to be aware of in iStation. There is a new requirement that's now going to include date of birth in iStation when you roster students. This change applies to new students who are added for the remainder of the 2019-2020 school year, and your fall rostering that will happen for the 2020-2021 school year. If date of birth is not included when you're entering new students, you'll receive an error message and be prompted by the system to enter date of birth for the student. The Assessment and Accountability team uses student EDU IDs to match student assessment records, as you know. But in cases of duplicate EDU IDs or invalid EDU IDs, we do need to rely on other information like date of birth to match assessment records to IC data. So we hope that you will understand the importance of putting in date of birth for students into iStation. Lastly, in response to stakeholder feedback, and to ensure that our Idaho Reading Indicator is accessible to all students, SDE has convened 2 working groups to investigate the possibility of developing accommodated forms of our IRI for students who are deaf and hard of hearing or blind and visually impaired. We sought participation of stakeholders for these groups across Idaho. Our initial blind visually impaired work group convened in October. The team studied and analyzed the accessibility of the various IRI subtests and worked to prioritize the assessment of subskills to ensure appropriate assessment of literacy acquisition for blind visually impaired students. Our deaf and hard of hearing group met for a second session in early November. This team has begun the process of drafting some administration guidance and protocols for an accommodated IRI. We did have iStation representatives in attendance for this meeting. We'll be looking for additional stakeholder feedback outside of the working group. This will be important to our process, and we will look for guidance on our draft documents when we're ready. Watch for additional updates in future newsletters and webinars. Questions regarding IRI?
Don't have any questions on the IRI at this point, but I would just remind everyone that as part of the statewide contract, you can use iStation to progress monitor students all throughout the year, and many schools have administered the IRI in a winter session, either in December or January, so please note that that is available to all of you. The state does not use winter data or collect that data, but it is informative as a mid-year checkpoint and an opportunity to use that mid-year checkpoint to set goals for the spring administration and final results of the test in May. So hopefully that helps you all in looking at valuable information and seeing and tracking student progress. Still don't see any other questions, so just a reminder that our next webinar is January 15th, 2020. So we hope that you will register for that webinar. As we noted, there will be no Spring Roadshow dates. So the webinars in January, February, and March will be critical for sharing information and timely relevant updates related to our assessment system and particularly Spring Window. So please join us as we prepare that information for you in January. In the meantime, we would like to wish you all a very Merry Christmas from the Assessment and Accountability team, and we look forward to seeing you in the new year and actually new decade as well. So enjoy your holidays, enjoy your time off, and please send us any questions that you have. We are happy to answer questions at any point in time. You have our contact information. Until we see you in January, have a wonderful holiday, and thanks everyone for joining us.